Hello, welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Fran Solomon.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we're thrilled to be your host for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, a social support network creating community after someone has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever grieve alone.
Our goal with this program is to have a friendly chat with some amazing people so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. Our guest today is Chloe Zelkha. Chloe is an educator, organizer, and spiritual caregiver. She's spent the last 10 years designing and facilitating immersive, transformative programs for young people and adults. After her dad died suddenly of an aortic aneurysm in 2017, she felt called to grief work and trained as a chaplain at UCSF Hospital, where she joined alongside folks who were ill and dying and their families. She currently works with a team of organizers, chaplains, and young adults who have experienced big losses. She helps to run the COVID Grief Network, a mutual aid initiative connecting young adults grieving the illness or death of someone to COVID-19 to free grief support in a community that knows what it's like. She holds a master's in education in specialized studies, focusing on transformative experiences from Harvard University, and a bachelor's in religion from Carleton College. She is currently studying towards rabbinic ordination. Chloe, we are delighted to have you as a guest on our show.
So glad to be with you.
Thank you. So Chloe, before we dive into your work, would you mind sharing your personal grief experience following the death of your beloved dad?
Yeah, I'd love to. When I was 25, about to turn 26, actually the first big grief experience in my life, my partner, now husband, was hit by a car on his bicycle and suffered really serious injuries. Severe brain injury. He fractured vertebrae on his neck and his sternum and had nerve damage on his legs. And really, it wasn't clear if he was gonna wake up and then be okay. And 3 months after that was when my dad suddenly died of an aortic aneurysm, basically a heart attack. And so I was really kind of just suddenly thrust into a big experience of reckoning with dying, that we can all die actually any moment. And it brought a lot of sadness and rage and all sorts of things. And also I like to think some wisdom or some kind of deepening of my own story and emotional life.
Yeah. So I wonder how is that a part of your story now, where the work that you're doing? I can't help but see, even as I read your bio, this sense of something's happened to me. I've grown as a person because of it, and now I find myself doing things in my life that are somehow associated, with that.
Yeah. After the dust kind of settled, when my physical system and my emotional system had still certainly was processing and continue to experience the impact. But when the dust had settled a little bit, I just felt a call to journey alongside people who are going through that kind of waking up to mortality through these heartbreaking ways that happens. And was lucky to find myself in a chaplaincy residency at a hospital, and to have the experience of just seeing little slices of my story and other people's stories, and getting to show up for them in ways that I wasn't able to show up for myself because of the crisis moment. And so actually it was really healing to me to be working in a hospital in that way. And in some ways I felt a lot less like a helper and certainly not a grief fixer, a lot more like a student of kind of sitting at the feet of the masters, of people who are in it, and in something that our culture, and certainly I, was conditioned to push away. So it was a beautiful learning experience for me, and along the way got some insight into the ways young adults might be better supported in their grief, and started thinking more about that.
Yeah, so tell us about the retreats. These are interesting to me, and it seems like to be a really great opportunity for some healing to happen in people's lives.
Yeah, they've been beautiful. Basically, before my dad died, I was in the business of creating powerful group experiences for people, often around joyous shared experiences and not around harder ones. But had been running fellowships and retreats and different immersive programs, stuff like that. And just had some really powerful experiences myself, connecting with other young adults who had experienced loss through organizations like the Dinner Party. And there's so many good organizations, Heal Grief being one of them. Okay. Basically thought to bring people together in the way that I knew was so transformative from my other work, with a few friends, together for a big grief sleepover, basically.
Yeah.
And together, yeah, we sing, we smash stuff, we make art, we have, we party. But we grieve together, and it's been powerful stuff.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Yeah.
So how did that lead you into the COVID Grief Network?
Yeah, when COVID came on the scene, I think the group of us that had been building those spaces together just realized quickly, like, wow, a lot of folks are about to join our ranks. A lot of people are going to be lost to this specific disease. And since we knew how powerful it was together in community with other people with similar experiences and of the same age group, and seeing how isolating the experience of COVID was about to be, kind of running the scenario in my head of like, oh, imagine the week my dad died, if then we couldn't have an in-person funeral, if then we couldn't sit Shiva, if that, all the things that people, the double grief that people are feeling, we thought maybe we can set up something a lot like all these beautiful mutual aid networks we're seeing around other things pop up, but for young adults experiencing grief due to COVID.
And why specifically young adults?
Yeah, we knew from our own experiences that often it can be especially isolating to lose someone as a young adult if you don't know other people your own age that kind of get it. And it can feel like you're meeting people who are in the club. I'm in the Dead Dads Club. So, and then just in the hospital, I was seeing like, wow, all the grief groups that seem to be happening, not all of them, but often it's older folks, and it can feel not right or intimidating to walk into a space that's older widowers and you're a young person. So that's where that desire came from. Yeah,
it is such a neglected age demographic when it comes to the bereavement field. That's one of the reasons why, for Fran and I, we're heartened when we hear about folks serving this age group. There's a lot out there these days for children and teenagers, and as you said, for maybe adults of an older age that are dealing with particular types of losses. But this young adult age demographic has really been somewhat neglected, and the statistics are pretty stark. That at least of what it bears out, that at least a third are within 2 years or a year of experiencing a significant death in their life. And if you span that out to 2 years, it's over half or nearly half of all young adults. So thank you for what you're doing, and we appreciate the opportunity to be, connected and supporting one another in our efforts.
Yeah, I feel the same. Thanks for all you're doing.
So, Chloe, I just want to go back to something you had said a bit earlier about how your father's death and perhaps the accident really brought you to a place where mortality exists, that we're not here forever. Can you talk about that experience a bit?
Yeah, it's at the time it felt like the most heartbreaking experience of getting in touch with reality that I've ever had. I had previously been interested in spiritual practice in different ways. I had been a student of Buddhism and of Judaism, and I had on my fridge posted the 5 remembrances that the Buddha said to recite daily. I'm of the nature to grow old. Nothing can stop me from growing old. I'm of the nature to grow sick. I'm of the nature to die. And I didn't get that, not one bit. And I think my dad dying made that just, so clear in a new way. And in some ways it wasn't until later that felt like a gift, and I would never kind of force that gift on anyone else, but there are ways in which it's impacted my life, made it more, made it feel like I have a responsibility to live fully, or made it more possible for me to live fully.
It's in a lot of ways, it's the power of that word knowing, right? Like, you can know certain things like facts, figures, you can be aware of certain things, but there's this other definition to the word to know, and that's where you actually live it. You've experienced it, and now you know, like you didn't know before. And I've had so many young adults, well, I mean, really, people of all ages, I have to say, children, teenagers, young adults, older adults, who have said to me, I did not know that it was like this. I didn't know the power of loss and how it really impacted my life. I even have people who said, I want to go back and apologize to all the people who I've known all these years who have gone through this, because all of the things I said to them or didn't say to them or didn't do for them that I now know, so there's a lot behind the word knowing, that we know it, but we really know it. And now we know certain things about others too, and how we treat them.
Yeah, it can be an amazing portal to compassion. And it can be a real, especially in the immediate aftermath, a real scary, for me, it brought a lot of fear. Like, oh my gosh, if I can die, if my dad could die, like, who else is going to die right now? And I think one of the things that community can do, and that I think support can do, is to make us feel like we can live in the not knowing and not walk around afraid all the time. There's some kind of steadiness.
Yeah, grief teaches us to live in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, and that community can very much be that anchor, in the midst of knowing that, that life is unpredictable. Yeah, very much. Well, Chloe, we only have a few minutes left, and a lot of times people watching our show want to know, how can we connect with the guest that you had? So how could people connect with you if they're interested in doing that?
Yeah, would welcome people to go to our website of the COVID Grief Network. It's covidgriefnetwork.org, and can find a way to connect with me and with the network there, and would welcome that.
Wonderful. So, Chloe, again, we want to thank you for being our guest here at Let's Talk Death, for sharing your personal journey and your work behind COVID Grief Network.
Thanks, I'm honored.
And thank you to those of you who joined us for this episode of Let's Talk Death. If you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit us at healgrief.org. At healgrief.org, you can learn more about all of the programs and resources of Heal Grief, including our national network of support for grieving young adults called Actively Moving Forward.
Make sure to sign up on healgrief.org to receive our newsletter for links to future episodes of Let's Talk Death.
And so again, we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Let's Talk Death.